Barik. There's no sound, right? Is that correct?
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am John McGlynn, co-founder and director of publications of the Lontara Foundation, and the moderator of this session titled Do Rights and Doing Right. We have a distinguished list of speakers with us today, whom I will introduce shortly. But before doing so, I would like the organizations and institutions that have made this event possible. Allow me first to thank the organizers, the 17,000 Islands of Imagination Foundation, which is the brainchild behind the Jakarta Content Week, Frankfurt Book Fair, and the Lontara Foundation. We have several partner institutions, and they are Goethe Institute, Literature Across Borders, CEATL, which is the European Council of Literary Translators Associations, and a number of supporting institutions as well. Asia Pacific Writers and Translators Association, Astier Pecher Film and Literary Agency, the British Council, the Korea Translation Academy, Pontas Literary and Film Agency, and World Editions. Our featured speakers today, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them, are Nikki Harman. She's a full-time translator of Chinese literature. Alexandra Buchler, the director of literature across frontiers, and Bjorn Hermann, a member of the board of CEATL, the European Council of Literary Translations and Associations. But to provide a little bit of a background for today's event, I would like to introduce you to a special guest, that being Claudia Kaiser, who's the vice president for the Frankfurt Book Fair. Welcome, Claudia.
Thank you, John. And hello, everyone, and welcome to this forum, the Translators Forum, with a focus for translators in the Southeast Asian region. This forum is part of Jaktent, or Jakarta Content Week, as John mentioned earlier, which is a new forum for professional creative exchange and business in Asia Pacific, which saw its premiere in November 2020. Despite the pandemic, the first edition was held online completely, and as you saw earlier, had about 200 events and more than 300 speakers, so it was probably the largest event in Southeast Asia in this category. As John said, my name is Claudia Kaiser, and I'm vice president of the Frankfurter Buchmesse. And we're very excited and happy to be able to stage this forum today. Translations and your work is a vital and extremely important part of the publishing industry. Often underestimated, often underpaid, we need to make sure that this important work is being recognized, especially in times like these, where translations are even more important than they are in the old normal. In times when we could travel, understand, and learn, now we can't. And while we all live in lockdowns and cannot visit, cannot experience other cultures, we rely on translations even more than we used to. That's one of the reasons why we were keen to start this forum as part of the Jakarta Content Week. We were very lucky to receive support from the Federal Foreign Office of Germany, the German Embassy in Jakarta, the Goethe Institute, as John mentioned, the 17,000 Islands of Imagination Foundation, as well as us, the Frankfurt Book Fair, to stage this forum. And I would really like to thank all the organizations for their support. As you probably heard, we already conducted 2 sessions in December, which was focused on translators who translate from the German language into their own languages. And today and next week, 28th January, we focus on you translators who translate from or into the English language or others. We look forward to discuss and exchange and learn from each other and from you. As this forum is for you, and we want to support you and the extremely important work that you do. We really hope you enjoy this session and that you will get something out of it. And please let us know what you liked and what you missed so we can adapt as we move on. And we really would like to implement a long-term exchange and hope we can continue with these sessions. So thank you very much for your attention and enjoy. I just wanted to say also that we are recording this session and it's also going to be streamed on YouTube. Thank you. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Claudia. It's always a pleasure seeing you. I wish you would come back to Jakarta soon.
I hope so too.
You'll have to wait for that. I thank the audience for coming too, joining us today. As you know from the flyer that was sent out, we have gathered here to discuss translators' rights, a subject that even old-timers, such as myself, some know too little about. This is why I'm very happy to be here today, to get a chance to hear what 3 leading translation advocates have to say. The event today will be divided into several segments. First, each of the speakers will be given 10 to 15 minutes to speak, which will be followed, each of them followed by a short question and answer period. Following the 3 presentations, there will be breakout rooms so the audience will be divided into 4, and each of the speakers and myself will monitor the conversations. Thereafter, I will ask somebody from the group to give a brief summation of what was discussed. And then after that, we'll get a chance for the speakers to give closing remarks. So let's get started. Our first speaker today is Nikki Harman, whose name I mentioned earlier. Nikki lives in the UK and translates full-time from the Chinese, focusing on fiction, literary nonfiction, and occasionally poetry. When not translating, she works on Paper Republic, a nonprofit website promoting Chinese literature and translation, where she is also a trustee. She organizes translation-focused projects, mentors new translators, gives regular talks and workshops on translation, and is a frequent judge of translation contests. From 2014 to 2017, she was co-chair of the UK Translators Association. She blogs and she tweets as well. So take down her name and get on her list. Thank you for coming here today, Nikki.
Thank you very much. I feel really privileged to be with everybody, and I'm delighted to be able to talk to you all. I hope you'll have lots of questions. So I'm going to give you a brief rundown of how I started in translation, because I'm not a shining example of what to do and how to do it, but I hope that by telling you some of the things I did right and some of the things I got extremely wrong, that will start a conversation going about how we can better look after ourselves as translators. So I started about 25 years ago. I kind of fell into translation, and as soon as I translated my first piece, I immediately knew that that was what I really, really wanted to do. I just loved it. I just loved the idea that I could read this Chinese and that I could make it available to people who couldn't read a word of Chinese. I was opening a window to another culture, other people's experiences. I found it utterly inspiring. And of course, I loved the language. I loved the fact that I was reading the Chinese. I also loved the fact that I was recreating it in English. So it had me absolutely smitten from the word go. So the very first book that I translated was K, The Art of Love by Hong Ying, who is a pretty well-known writer from mainland China. And I got this book by my first few translations came to me not in the standard way at all. But this again is quite interesting to talk about because you don't always just get the book from the publisher and do it. Hong Ying's husband, they were both living in London, asked me if I would translate it on spec, as it were, and then the agents would sell the rights. So this is an example of what not to do. So of course I did it on spec. The good thing was that I got her husband, Henry Chow, mentoring me on my first translation, which was really nice. He would check every chapter. The bad thing was that I had absolutely no guarantee that this translation was going to make it into publication or that I would get a penny for it. But I did. It did come out in publication. And that was really where I started, and I sat back and I thought, wonderful, the contracts will roll in. And of course they didn't, nothing happened. So I thought again, then somebody asked if I would do a non-fiction, a work of sociology with a Chinese woman who was a friend of the author, China Along the Yellow River. And it was an absolutely wonderful book. I felt very privileged to be able to do it. It was real sociology as real life. It was extraordinarily influential in China. So I said, yes. And once again, don't do what I did. Ruhua and I sat down, we translated it for absolutely nothing. We found a publisher, and it was an academic publisher, and we never got any money from it. And worst of all, the author never got any money from it either. However, the book did come out. So let's go on to how you can and should do things and how you hope things will work out. So from then on, I did begin to get book contracts. I set up my page on Paper Republic. I've given you the link there, and you'll find lots and lots of resources on it. I began to get work through that, and the way that things should work, if you're not a translator, I'll just briefly go through it. In an ideal world, a publisher will contact you and will ask you if you'd be interested in doing a book. They might ask you for a sample in advance. And then they offer you the contract. You negotiate the terms of the contract, which other speakers here will be able to tell you much more about. But I'll say a bit about my experience of that. You then negotiate, for example, things like you should keep the copyright of the translation. How much are you going to be paid? Are you going to be paid half in advance and half when you've completed the translation? All sorts of nitty-gritty things like that. Do you get royalties? And so on and so forth, which I'm sure are going to come up in the discussion today. You then do the translation. You submit it on time, and here's something that I always say to people, do submit on time. It's not just that it creates a really bad impression if you don't submit it on time. It's that other people depend on you. The publishers will have organized editors, they will have organized a schedule, they will have started thinking about their promotion. If you're late, then everyone else will be late as well. And you really get a bad name for yourself and indeed for other translators sometimes. Anyway, then you submit your translation, and the editor will get back to you. You will go through edits. It may be that by this time you've been paid all of your fee, and you'll be left doing a great deal of work, which feels like you're doing it for nothing because you've already been paid, and there may be a considerable amount of editing. But believe me, the editor is the translator's best friend, because the editor will look at what you've written and may not understand a word of Chinese or whatever language, but they will be able to pick up things, and a good editor will say, well, did you really mean that? And then you'll get a chance to go back to the original and say, oops, no, maybe I didn't. Maybe that number was wrong. Maybe I left a naught off that number. That, believe me, that does happen, has happened to me once. And this can be an incredibly fruitful exchange. Then you may get copy editor as well, and then your book comes out. After which, more and more nowadays, translators are asked and expect to help promote the book. And this is one of the things I most love about having done a translation, to get a chance to talk about it. In an ideal world, you get a chance to talk with the author about it. That partly depends on how much money the publisher has to bring the author over, but nowadays can also be done on Zoom. How much English the author speaks, whether someone can afford to pay for an interpreter if they don't. So if you're lucky, you end up in lots of conversations with the author. If not, you may just be talking on your own about the book. You may be asked to blog, and I've done quite a lot of that. Again, this is all work where you have to think to yourself, how much do I want to do? Because it's likely to be for free and for love. You're very unlikely to get any payment for doing promotion, but I would really, really recommend it. It is an incredibly rewarding process. So that's the promotional bit, and then you get on with the next job which has come through. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is the kind of support that you can look for and get, and how you can prepare yourself for having a career as a translator, how you can look after yourself, how you can look after your rights. Did I say don't give up the day job? I did give up the day job in the end, but it took me about 12 years before I actually gave up my day job and became a full-time translator. It coincided with a time in my life when I could do that because the kids were grown up and so on. It is actually quite a scary business, relying on translation and on nothing else. And I think there are people in the audience who I hope will be able to put in their pennyworth and say some things about that. But anyway, I was in a position when I felt I could do it. So how do you prepare yourself? I once read a wonderful thing by a long-term translator who I think translates from Italian, who said, real life prepares you. And I think it really does. To become a good translator, it's good to have experienced quite a lot of real life. Also, my second point, it's really good to be very good in your target language, in the English, the language you're translating into. And people often ask, should I do a course? Should I do an MA in translation? Should I do summer schools? You'll find all these things that I've mentioned discussed if you do courses. Although the courses on the whole are less good on the practical element about your rights, they are very good about the business of becoming a translator. I don't know an awful lot about MA courses, but there are quite a lot of them. And I know people who've done them and they've got a lot out of them. The one thing that I do a lot of is teaching summer schools. And I would totally recommend summer schools. Again, I think there are people in the audience who have been on summer schools with me and other summer schools. So it would be great to hear what they learned from them. I think what I'm trying to say is that although as a freelance translator, in a sense, you're completely on your own, in another sense, you are part of a huge community. And it's a community of people who translate from other languages as well. And you'll find that people translating from other languages have just as much to say on the same challenges, and you'll get a lot from talking to them as well. So yes to summer schools, yes to MAs if that's what you feel like doing. There are lots of online summer schools now. The one that I'm going to be teaching on, Bristol, the Bristol Translates is coming up in July. Has lots of language options on it. And there are other summer schools as well. I think one called BCLT is not running a specifically Chinese, but is running other language combinations, British Centre for Literary Translation. And there'll be others in other countries. So yes to summer schools. Apart from anything else, it will give you a wonderful chance to talk to other translators who have more or less experience than you, and you will always learn from people. So other aspects of the community, if at all possible, join a professional association, because professional associations will tell you an awful lot about protecting your rights. I have had a lot to do with the Translators Association in the UK, which is part of the Society of Authors. And I have found that they have a wonderful service that they offer, which is to look through your contracts. So every time you get a contract, you can pass it by them. And I see I've only got 2 minutes left. So a community like Paper Republic is also a very, very good resource and a support. There's a resources section there, which I will hurriedly update when I've finished talking to you today. So check all the links work. And if you're translating not from Chinese, but from another language, why not set up a website yourself? One of the wonderful things about working on Paper Republic is that we've discovered other language communities have set up very similar things. When they see that what we have done, it's very simple. You set up a website and you use it as a blog and a forum for community discussion. A last thing I want to say is do practice with short stories. I meant to talk more about this, but it's a great way of dipping a toe in the water of translation. That's all I have to say for the moment. I hope there'll be lots of questions.
Okay. Farid? Okay. Put Nikki back. Okay. Everybody can see Nikki too? Because I want to ask Nikki some questions before we go on to the next speaker. Okay. Nikki, you said you can now live from translation. Can you live well?
No. I can live moderately well because it's the that time of my life where I'm not spending huge amount on young children, for example. I would say that a lot of literary translators can get by having other strings to their bow. So if you can do technical translation, if you teach, if you do editing, or if you do something completely different, if you work part-time as a plumber. So I think literary translation can be combined with other things. And that is a way of...
I was going to ask you that. As a translator, I have worked as a subtitler, an interpreter, that kind of thing. Do you do things like that as well?
No, I do know people who do. I suppose you could call me a part-time teacher in that I do these summer schools. And I have taught, I taught at Imperial College London. I was teaching technical translation.
Okay. One thing I'd really like to find out from you is that your translations into English, have they been used as the bridging language for translations into other languages?
Yes, that's a really excellent question. The answer is yes, I know sometimes, other times nobody tells me. One of the things that the Translators Association encourages all of us to do is to have contracts where it specifically mentions relay translations. And it has a little clause which says, if my translation is used as a relay translation, I would like my permission to be asked, and I would like a copy of the whatever comes out of it, the resulting translation. It doesn't specifically ask for money, and I've never bothered to ask for money, but I believe people do get money.
Yeah, I mean, works from Swedish, for example. I mean, so few people translate from Swedish, for example, that if it's popular in English, English is probably going to be used as the basis for that.
It does happen, and the worst thing is when you don't know it's happened. I'm perfectly happy for it to happen so long as I know. And also, oh, here's another thing. You should try to get put on the inside, the copyright page of the resulting translation, translated by X from the translation from Chinese into English, copyright Nikki Harman. Do you see what I mean? So that you are credited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we translators are not, we rarely have agents to protect our rights. I mean, is this something that Paper Republic does? Try to...
I did try, and no, Paper Republic doesn't. I mean, we're a charity, a non-profit, so we do broadly educational stuff. I did try having an agent once, but all that happened was that they knew less than me, and I lost the small amount I made on a book, quite a significant percentage to them. So most translators don't have agents. A few do, like Howard Goldblatt, who's a well-known translator from Chinese. I know he has an agent.
Well, listen, Nikki, we have to get on to the next speaker, but I thank you very much. You know, stay there, don't go away, because
I won't go away.
we need to talk to you again later. Okay. Farik, the next person who's to speak today is an amazing woman named Alexandra Buchler. Could you? Okay. Alexandra is quite amazing. I mean, she translates from her native Czech language into English and Greek. Amazing, amazing. But anyway, Alexandra is the director of Literature Across Borders, the European platform for literary exchange, translation, and policy debate, which is based in Wales, the United Kingdom. She's developed a range of initiatives fostering literary exchange and translation within Europe and between Europe and other global regions, particularly Asia and the Middle East. She's a co-founder of the Literary Translation Center at the London Book Fair, which didn't happen this year, or last year, I should say, and has contributed to the programs of several international book fairs. She has served on the executive committee of the UK Translators Association. She is a founding member of the European Civil Society Platform for Multilingualism and serves on on the Asia Pacific Writers and Translators Advisory Board. Welcome today, Alexandra. It's great seeing you. I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you, Lontara Foundation. Thank you to the Frankfurt Book Fair. We have a long relationship with the Frankfurt Book Fair, and I will mention this later. I woke up today to being a minor celebrity in a negative sense in Southeast Asia, and this was because of my tweet where I said that I'm looking forward to speaking on this panel. And I'm bringing this up because the response to what I said and the response to this panel taking place was what I would describe as knee-jerk. The people who responded to it in a very critical tone did not really look at what we're doing. This is not a panel about translation in Southeast Asia or in Asia. It's a panel about practice in Europe. And I suppose if you just look at the poster and see the participants, your response will be, oh, another all-white panel. If the people who responded bothered to go to our website to see what we have been doing, they would see that we have organized many panels with participants from Asia. Specifically at the Frankfurt Book Fair, we organized panels which were all Asian. Nobody ever said this is a problem. So please think before you respond to tweets. This is the nature of Twitter. And I'm sorry I'm wasting precious time here, but I felt I had to respond to this because I found the response to my tweet very disappointing. So, John, you renamed our organization, and it happens all the time. We're actually Literature Across Frontiers. And I have a very short presentation so that you're not looking at my face all the time. And I will share the screen here. I also, oh, sorry. This is not the one I wanted to show, goodness. Okay, I will, this is not good. I will find the right one, or maybe I will just speak and look for it. Right, I also wanted to thank Nikki very much for her talk, and she addressed a number of issues that I wanted to actually touch on, not speak about, exhaustively, but to refer to them. And she really went through this whole process of what happens, when you either ask to translate or you offer a translation, etc. It was really useful, and I hope it was useful to you. What I'm hoping to get from this encounter is, now I'm trying to share again. Oh gosh, no, sorry, I'm not very good at this, so I will just talk, or maybe the technical team will help me. Our organization has been around for 20 years, and we have been working on connecting literary scenes in Asia and also the Middle East, North Africa, with Europe, with literary scenes in Europe. We have been doing this through, I'm still trying to get back to this screen, because I managed to do it before and I'm not quite sure what happened. So
Alexandra, I'll do it for you.
Sorry?
I will do it for you. I will
Thank you very
share.
much. I sent it. Yeah, I don't know what happened. How come the other one came?
Yeah. Just a minute.
Anyway,
Just a minute.
sorry about this. So we have been working with a number of partners, and one of them is also an organization. Thank you so much, Claudia. I should have practiced more. Okay. So 20 years in the making, we are based at a university, and our key aim is to facilitate connections between Europe and other global regions. And you have our address here and our Twitter feed, etc., etc. I'm also very happy to be representing Asia Pacific Writers and Translators, an organization that has been in existence since 2005, and which brings together writers and translators from the whole Asia Pacific region. I happen to be, despite my accent, I happen to be also Australian, and I was born in Prague. I'm Czech, and I thought that it would be interesting to connect with this organization, also as director of Literature Across Frontiers. The Asia Pacific Writers and Translators is an organization I would recommend that you check out and maybe become members. They mainly, their activity is mainly to organize an annual conference, and they also organize for their members publications. So the most recent one is called Meridian, and it's an anthology which published with Drunken Boat, which published the short pieces by members of the organization. And I'm a member, but I sit on the advisory committee. And our aim is to bring writers and translators from the region into contact with European counterparts. Now, I mentioned that we work with a number of organizations and institutions, both government and NGOs. We work with festivals, with book fairs, and with universities. Our work with two book fairs, Frankfurt and London, is long-standing, and in the UK, I will speak about this in a minute, but also we are members of various European networks, and John mentioned them. I would like to stress the network called NLIT, European Network of National Organizations Supporting Literary Translation. They don't have a website, but it's a network of organizations that promote their national literature and provide grants for translation. And this is the important bit, because when you're translating a book and a publisher is deciding on whether to take it on or not, or before you start translating, when a publisher actually finds a title to publish, whether they can get a grant plays a role. And so so these organizations promote what's best in the annual crop of their writers and books, and they support the translation with grants. So again, I would recommend that you look at what these organizations do, and practically every country in Europe has one. Next one. Now, in the United Kingdom, we mainly work to promote literary translation, and we work with emerging writers and translators. We, as John said when he read my bio, I was one of the people who founded or co-founded the Literary Translation Centre at the London Book Fair, and we contribute as an organisation to its programming. The centre has been there for 10 years, and unfortunately the London Book Fair didn't take place this year. We couldn't celebrate actually the 10th, last year, we couldn't celebrate the 10th anniversary. I would also like to say that we are part of the PEN centres. I'm actually on the exec committee of Wales PEN Cymru, and each of the nations, as we refer to them in the UK, has its own PEN centre. So ours is the Welsh one, and we regularly meet with the English PEN, with Scottish PEN, and with PEN from in Northern Ireland. And last but not least, I'd like to point out Wales Literature Exchange, which is one of these organizations that promote literature and provide translation grants. Next, please. Okay. How long do I have? I listed here a number of topics that we could delve into, maybe in the breakout group that we're going to have. And Nikki actually referred to quite a number of these issues: training and skills development. You have numerous possibilities, and it's not necessary, and I stress this, it's not necessary for you to have a degree in translation. I think what you need to have is a desire to improve both languages that you use, or if you use multiple languages, you have to cultivate your source and target language. And you can do it through various means. And Nikki mentioned, for example, summer schools or workshops, and I think these are very, very useful. Contract. Now, Bjorn is going to talk about this, and I'm really pleased that he's with us. The Council of European, or the European Council of Translators Associations is a very important body, and he will tell you about what it does and talk you through a contract. What he's going to say is also a very good example of how translators can get together and negotiate collectively with publishers, which is not something that happens in many countries. So it's a good example of what one can aspire to. Now, we are supposed to be talking about translators' rights, but translators also have an obligation, and the obligation is, it's almost like a code of ethics. They really have to do their best. They have to make sure that what they're translating is rendered into the target language appropriately. And what that means would, you know, we could discuss this for days on end. But what I want to say is that Nikki mentioned the editor, the publishing editor, is your best friend, and I absolutely agree with this. I used to translate into my native language. I don't do that anymore because I have lived more than two-thirds of my life in English-speaking countries, and So I started translating into English. I don't do much of that, but whether I translate one way or the other, I always want to work with an editor. So having your work edited is not, being criticized. It's the opposite. You are all working towards the purpose of producing the best translation and doing right by the author. So I think this is really important, because not all publishers edit, and I have encountered this numerous times also as someone who can read other languages, that you sometimes see translations which are really horrendous, and this shouldn't happen. It should be discussed. Bad translations really should be pilloried, and it's not really the fault of the translator, it's the fault of the publisher. In my native country, which is now called the Czech Republic, it was called Czechoslovakia when I was born there, there is a very strong Translators Association, and they established a prize in response to this kind of practice. And it's a prize which is awarded every year at the Prague Book Fair for the worst translation of the year. It may sound nasty, but it actually helped improve the standard. Basically, what happened in the 90s was that suddenly anything could be done. Everybody could become a publisher. Anything, books that previously would have been banned, could be published. So everybody went and published, and especially languages like English were very much in demand. And there weren't enough good translators. So there were books which came out that really should not have seen the light of day. So the quality and quality monitoring is extremely important. And it's also, I would say, the duty of the organizations that provide grants for translation. At Welsh Literature Exchange, we actually do this. And this is how we manage to weed out, the future bad translations. Now, solidarity. Translators have to be in solidarity. Yes, they compete with one another, but they will really gain from solidarity, from working with one another, from discussing with one another. There's a number of translators groups on Facebook, for example, and translators ask questions. They're not ashamed to admit that they don't know something. Quite on the contrary, it's actually what they should be doing. And some of these threads where a question is answered are extremely interesting to read. So again, I would recommend that you become part of these groups, and that you form networks. Networks, they may not become immediately professional associations. This is a process that takes a long time, but they provide mutual support. They work on advocacy, lobbying for funding, for example, and they function as discussion forums. Spaces. Translators are part of the industry, and they deserve to have their own space. When we founded at industry events, when we founded the Literary Translation Center at the London Book Fair, and many people have forgotten how it started, it was modeled on the Translation Center at the Frankfurt Book Fair. And that center no longer exists. It was merged with the International Center into Weltempfang. And, but still, it's a place where translators meet, where they have their forum at a very important industry event. And last but not least, we need recognition. So bursaries, awards, and prizes are also very important. And we need to celebrate them. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Alexandra. Fari? Okay. Thank you, Alexandra. Very interesting. Now, you live in Wales, and Welsh has made a comeback over the last century. What has been done to get Welsh literature translated into other languages?
Well, as I mentioned, there is an organization which is more than 20 years old, which was also modeled on the organizations around Europe. Like, for instance, in Norway, they have Norla, which promotes Norwegian literature, and it's one of the oldest organizations of this kind. So Wales Literature Exchange promotes books from Wales, books written in both languages, English and Welsh, and it provides grants for translation. So do look it up, have a look at the books that are promoted this year and in previous years. There's a selection of books, which are not always the books that were, you know, the most popular in the country itself. They're books that we think can travel. So, and this is really important, that selecting books for promotion is really quite sensitive business, as all of us know here. And sometimes organizations, you know, decide to promote books that you know, received a prize or whatever. It doesn't always work. And we have, for instance, in Britain, a kind of informal prize, which is called the Not the Booker Prize. And this was awarded to a Welsh book this year. And it wasn't a book that was selected by Wales Literature Exchange, but the organization is also promoted it, has also promoted it, because it was interesting to see this book actually making an impact, and foreign publishers asking about it. So it's a continuous process, the process of selection.
One of our audience members, Frida Amran, asks about these organizations. Do they provide translation funding?
Yes, yes, yes. This is one of their main functions, and this is how they achieve, you know, what they want to achieve. So these organizations do provide translation funding. Some of them insist that the translation is made directly from the language, and this is something that Nikki brought up, that translations sometimes are made from a bridge language, but it has generally become accepted that this can't always happen. So unless a country invests also in teaching its own language all around the world, and some countries do that. For instance, Catalonia supports lectureships in Catalan language in about 100 universities around the world. So you have different ways in which you can actually support the learning of your national language, but you won't find translators into every language on earth that can translate from it directly. So what I would say is that if a translation is made, and this would apply in this forum, I think, if a translation is made from a bridge language, which would be typically English, it's really important to take that on board, in the sense that you have to understand that you're translating a book that actually emerged from a different cultural context. Now, in the case of Welsh and English in Wales, obviously we have books that are written in Welsh. Not that many people outside the country speak it, but it's taught at universities around Europe. And so the organization actually receives requests to translate through English And what we have to do is actually often provide the English translation. So we have control over the quality of the translation into English, which is really important. So grants, the applications are usually quite straightforward, but the publisher has to provide information, basic information about why they selected this title. They have to have a contract with the translator, and they have to obviously have a copyright contract with the translation license contract with the author. And this is, again, something that's really important to remember. It's a kind of basic thing, but it's important to remember that in the case of translation, there are three parties to the whole business: the author, and often represented by an agent, the translator, and the publisher. And what the translator really should do is, if they have any doubt about whether they understand the source text, they should ask the author, or they should at least discuss it with somebody who may have the answer. So this is what happens also in the forums that I mentioned, that questions are asked about a specific phrase or context, cultural context, and so on.
Okay. Do you know of any cases in Europe, well, at least in Europe, about countries providing funding for translations into their languages, or is it always the other way?
It's not always the other way. And again, most countries have some form of support for their domestic publishers. This can be also support for publishing quality books, which may not be commercially viable, and especially in small markets, but also support for inbound translation. In Wales, for example, we have an organization called the Books Council, and this is what they do. They actually support Welsh publishers, not only those who publish in Welsh, but also those who publish in English, because it's a small market, and the English language publishers, for example, compete with publishers, with large publishing houses in England. So there is that form of support, and in some countries like France, it's really significant. Okay. Large amounts of money.
Time for just one last question. What do you think is the biggest stumbling block to getting translations out? Is it money? I mean, is it the translation funding program? Is it herd mentality on the part of publishers that only want popular fiction? I mean, what's the challenge?
Well, this is the question we will be probably debating, and trying to find an answer to forever. It's quite complicated, and there's really no simple answer to this. This is something we have been discussing at the Literary Translation Center in London, in Frankfurt, etc. And if you ask publishers, they each gives you a different answer. Some will say, well, it's a book that tells a universal story. Another one will say, we only look for good stories, whatever that means. The writing has to grab you. It's often it's really difficult to kind of make anything, of these responses, because they're so varied. So yes, a really well-written book, again, the criteria for that are different, in different countries. A book that may tell a very local story, that may tell you something about the society, but then another publisher will say, I'm looking for something, and maybe it's, all this combined, and telling a universal story. I remember once we also have been organizing publishers' visits to various countries, especially in Eastern Europe. And I remember visiting several publishers in one day, and we were presented with, they presented their best authors to us. And there was one story, one book, which was about a kind of diary of a pregnancy, and another one, which was a historical novel set in the Second World War. And when we came out of the building, the publishers said, well, guess which one I would be interested in. Well, it wasn't the pregnancy story, because we have lots of these written in English. And yes, it was universal. There was nothing kind of local about it, really. Maybe, the standard of the healthcare system could refer to, societal issues, but that was the response we had. So it was quite interesting. Yeah.
Thank you, Alexandra. And now we are going to have to go on to our next speaker, which I look forward to hearing from. That's Bjorn Hermann. He's a Norwegian and is been a member of the board of CEATL, which he will tell you about since 2017. He published his first literary translation in 1988 and has been a full-time translator of fiction and nonfiction from English and Swedish since that time. He's translated lots and lots of books, classics, like Shakespeare, Herman Melville, Mark Twain, and so on, up to modern classics like Aldous Huxley and George Orwell. He has served several terms as a member of the board of the Norwegian Association of Literary Translators, and was its chairman from 2014 to 2020. In that position, he served as one of the association's negotiators for a new agreement on a standard contract with the Publishers Association. He's done some wonderful work, and I look forward to hearing what he's done and what CEATL does. Thank you, Bjorn.
Thank you, John. Do you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, okay. So, sorry. Just to correct one thing you said, I wasn't chairman from 2014 to 20, but from 2002 to 2008, when we had a campaign against our publishers that we won, and which gave us a very good contract, and which has been modernized now in 2020 again. But I'm here to speak about CEATL and the kind of work we do to promote translators' rights. So let me try to share my screen first of all. There it is. So unfortunately, this website isn't very beautiful, but we will have to live with that even for another short while. We are going to modernize it. CEATL is organizing Translators Associations from 29 countries all over Europe. We have 35 members altogether. And as Nikki mentioned in her, when she started talking, translators are very often underpaid and not very well treated by publishers. And this situation is the same in Europe too. So there's some feedback on the sound, is that, yeah. So one of the things we have been doing in CEATL is trying to make guidelines for fair contracts for translators. And you can find it on this website, and I'm going to just give you a very short idea of the presentation of what it's about, because for some of our members, they have no kind of agreements with publishers or anything to support them when they get a commission for a translation, and the result is that they get underpaid, or all their rights are taken away, and they sign away their rights. So we made this guidelines for fair translation contracts in 2019. And the idea is, for some, this will be like a dream situation to get contracts containing these provisions. And from others, this is everyday situation. But they are a reminder for anyone who signs a contract what to look for, what to ask for, and what they should expect from a decent translation contract. So first of all, when you sign a contract, you license your rights to your work. You don't cede it once and for all, but you license your rights to your translation for the publisher to publish it. And when you do that, the scope of the licensing should be very detailed. It should specify what rights you transfer: ebook, paperback, printed book, audiobook, and so on. And such a contract should never transfer rights that doesn't. Excuse me, I have to read here. Right to exploit the work through technologies that do not yet exist. Like in the 1980s, there was no provisions for audiobooks in our contracts. And so when the audiobook market turned up, the publishers tried to say to us that, oh, but we've already bought your rights for that. And then we could protest and say, because it wasn't specified in the contract, and that's a very important thing. Then there's the moral rights to the translation. It's your right to attribution, to be recognized as the author of your own work. And there's also the right of integrity. So the publisher cannot make changes to your text without your knowledge and approval. Also, the contract should provide for an editing and proofreading process that respects the translator's legal rights to be informed of and be able to verify any changes made to the translation. That's the good cooperation between the editor and the translator. And that's a good thing, but it's always the translator's own work, and the responsibility lies with the translator, and the right to accept changes or no lies with the translator. Then, of course, it's the really important part, and that's the remuneration. In principle, there should be a basic fee and royalties for further sales. So, and yeah, we could discuss that later if people have questions, concrete questions for it. Also, in terms of payment, when will you be paid? Shall there be an advance when you sign the contract? And how long after you deliver your translation can you expect to get the rest of your fee? Then there's also the idea that translators shall not be asked to do extra work except for the translation without extra payment. And there should be no exploitation of the work without remuneration, and that should be specified in the contract. Also, if you have a contract which gives you royalties, you should also receive at least once a year an accounting for the sales. Also, back to the moral rights again, the acceptance of the translation. As the translation is usually a commissioned work, and one of the fundamental tasks of the publisher is to ascertain the competence of the translator before commissioning the translation. So they cannot turn down your work afterwards and say, no, it isn't as good as we hoped, and then withdraw and don't pay you for your work. So the contract should not leave the door open for a publisher to refuse the translation arbitrarily. And this is things we've seen happen a lot of places and from time to time, to even to experienced translators and well-established translators. There's also another little thing mentioned in these guidelines, and that's warranties to the publisher. Because translators' responsibility regarding the content of the book should be to warrant that they have done the translation themselves and that it's entirely original and does not infringe on anyone else's intellectual property rights. Some publishers ask for, and we have had examples of this from member associations in CITO. Publishers ask for guarantees from the translator that the work does not contain any libelous or offensive content. That's outside the responsibility of the translator. Then also, finally, there's a special note at the end of these guidelines on work for hire contracts. And those, in general, should be avoided. Because if a publisher commissions a translation from you, he commissions a work of art, and let's see, I have to look at my notes. Yes, if the publisher wants to regard this work, the translation, as a work made for hire, that means he takes over your copyright and he takes over all your rights, even your moral rights. And according to the Berne Convention, this is actually not legal. So it's an infringement of the Berne Convention. And we will strongly recommend that translators doesn't accept this kind of contracts. Well, to get back to this website, the guidelines for fair contracts you will find here on the front page, and also here you will find translator rights. And if you look at the legal status, you will find all the basis for copyright for translators, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Berne Convention, and why literary translators are regarded as authors. Also, the UNESCO Nairobi recommendation. This is a recommendation that all translators love and publishers and other people never heard about for some reason or other. But it's very much in favor of translators' rights. So one other thing I would like to point out for you on this website is Counterpoint. It's a European e-zine on literary translators and translation. It's very much relevant stuff, both on building associations and presenting all the different member associations of the CITL. And it's from, I think the oldest one who's been presented so far is the Swedish Association of Literary Translators, started in 1893. And we have other ones just started 2 or 3 years ago. And from each issue of this free e-zine, and you will also see there's a lot written on copyright, on problems for translators, on positive solutions to problems and associations and so on. So it's quite relevant, this e-zine, and I would recommend it for you if you are interested. Another thing the CITL is working on these days, and that will be presented in probably in May, is an extra. I'm not sure if it will be part of this website or it will be an individual website, called an Association Boost book. That's for translators associations starting up, being new or needing new ideas and help. And this is collected from all the best practices of all member associations of the European community of translators. Then, yeah, just to get back to, I thought you might be interested in, because guidelines may be a good thing, but what to do when you meet the publisher. And I thought a model contract has been a solution for many associations have not been able to negotiate with their publishers a standard contract. So they prepare a model contract for the translators to look at and to, well, you could bring into your publishers. They would like this contract for my work. And here's one on the American Pen website. And it's, I don't know if anyone will pick up these links to these pages, but I would suggest you look at it. It specifies actually the same things that I mentioned in our recommendations for, or our guidelines for contracts. And this was made, it's updated to 2017. And it specifies fees, royalties for different kinds of uses and so on and so forth. So I think I think I'll stop there, and I'll leave to you to ask questions.
Okay.
Yes?
Well, I have a few for you. Hello, Bjorn. I have a few for you.
Yes?
First of all, you've done so much in the field of advocacy of translators' rights. Is it because you had a bad experience in the beginning?
Yeah, partly. The same publishers tried to cheat me twice on my first two translations. So that was one thing. Another thing was that getting a contract, I was very surprised when I got the right one, that it was 4 full pages of small print. So it's very detailed. So, and I didn't like to sign anything without reading it. And yeah, so I read the whole thing, and that's quite interesting stuff. So I would, that's one thing I would recommend. If you want to do something about your working conditions, start by reading your laws, start by reading your copyright law, and do it yourself. Don't leave it to lawyers. You need to understand it yourself.
Okay, you pointed out like the Bern Convention, and you pointed out some these international conventions. What about a translator in Indonesia, for example? Does or anywhere else, can he or she use those to fight for his or her rights, or what?
I think so. I think because that's probably what all of us have been doing. We based our work on Bern Convention especially, and local copyright law from country to country. They differ a bit, but the central stuff is more or less the same. I mean, in Europe, generally in Europe, you will not have work for hire contracts because this is not legal. In continental Europe, you can't sell your moral rights. So you can insist on having your name on your translation. In the US, you can sell your moral rights. So you can do it and they can publish it anonymously. It's like, you translated this book, you know.
So No, I mean, one question that came in is, so what is work for hire? I mean,
work for hire is that the publisher commissions a translation, and so they look upon you as I have to look
contractor.
I present this correctly. Work for hire is a person who, the one who has prepared the work and done the work, is paid for the work, and the work is adopted by someone else. You lose your moral rights, your right of integrity, and also you get a one-time payment, and you shouldn't.
No, I mean, obviously, if you do that, you won't have any chance of royalties or income in the future.
No. Anything, no. You lose everything. So it's kind of a buyout. And that's, and it's underpaid too.
Yeah, you said Norway has legal guarantees that a literary translator must be paid a certain amount per word or.
No, what we have a standard contract negotiated between our translator associations. There's two organizing literary translators, and the Publishers Association, so that any publisher, member of the Publishers Association, commissioning a translation from one of our members will have to use this standard contract.
Now, I wish CATL has done such a great amount of work. Now, would you like to come out here and and help out? Help here?
I think I would love the climate. Well, I think the most important thing that the CATL does is getting people in touch with each other, making them talk, discuss, and learn to know how things work in the different countries all over Europe. And it's extremely, it is very different. I mean, we have member associations being 4 or 5 years old that start wondering, what can we do at all? And we have some old ones like we are now. We are very we manage well.
Okay.
So,
well, this does seem to be a common theme among the three speakers, that the solidarity aspect, join groups, join together, so that.
I think that's the most important thing you can do. You have to get organized. I know, speaking just on my own behalf, because of our experiences in Norway, is that maybe not being organized as part of a bigger association, organizing a lot of other people too, because then literary translators tend to fall out and not to be the ones who are prioritized. So being organized on our own, our experience is that we take care of our own interests, and that's much more efficient, has turned out for us then. In Italy, we have a member of an organization who has joined the biggest workers' union in Italy, and they are very satisfied and get a lot of support there. It differs. You have to find local solutions. That's very important.
Thank you, Bjorn. I think we're going to go into our breakout sessions very soon, but I again greatly admire all the work that you and your organization have done, and it is a model for the world to use. Thank you so much. Now we will go into breakout sessions. How does this work, Tariq?
Yeah. Just wait. Okay, John, you can start.
I can't, I mean, how do we start?
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Just choice in button in right corner, view. Can you see it?
I'm sorry, where?
In the
Dimana?
right, in the sudut kanan atas.
View?
View, gallery.
Yeah.
Yeah, choice
Oh,
gallery.
okay.
Okay.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone can.
There we are.
Yeah.
So unmute everybody, or okay.
Yeah.
He said unmute semua.
Yeah.
Okay. So hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Okay. Okay. So please unmute everyone, because we're going to go around the room and everyone is going to introduce himself or herself to the others. So let's start with my upper left corner. That would be Sarah Whitmore. And I would like each of you to answer a couple, when you introduce yourself, please tell us your name. So this is on record. What country are you from? And what are your primary source and target languages? So, Indonesian English or English Indonesian or whatever. So let's start with Sarah.
Hello everyone, and hello John and other participants. Thank you. My name is Sarah Whitmore. I live in Jakarta, Indonesia, and right now I'm just doing Bahasa or Indonesian to English. That's all I'm really feeling comfortable with right now.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me, Muhammad? Muhammad, can I? Okay.
Yeah, everyone in this room, please open your video and unmute yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's get more. So Oni Suryama, where are you from?
I'm from I'm from Indonesia, currently living in Yogyakarta. Mainly, I translate from English to Bahasa Indonesia.
Okay. Who's next online? Chitra.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I'm currently living in Sumbawa, West Nusa Tenggara, and now I'm learning how to translate Indonesia to English and English to Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Who's next? Anne, Alicia, are you on? Who's on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Anne Alicia, or in Indonesian, I usually call Anne. I'm translating currently mainly in Indonesian and Japanese. As I mentioned about the language, I currently live in Indonesia, specifically in Surabaya.
Okay. Okay. Next, who's on? What? Did everybody go to the bathroom or something? Okay. Gimana Farid? Apa yang bisa dikerjakan?
Ya, lanjut aja Pak John dengan teman-teman yang mau berdiskusi, ngobrol, nggak apa-apa. Ya. Gua kebagian nontonnya soalnya.
Okay, so those who are online, those who are listening, will continue. I'd just like to ask you a few questions. Like, do you know if there are awards for literary translation in your country? I mean, I guess we're all in Indonesia here, but do you know of any literary translation awards?
I don't know any.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What I hope to do with the information we gather here today is to write a report for the Ministry of Education and Culture.
Okay.
For several years, prior to the 2015 Frankfurt Book Fair, there was a translation funding program. And because of this translation funding program, close to 2,000 books from Indonesia were translated into other languages. 2,000. I mean,
wow.
The Lontara Foundation, which has been around for 34 years this year, has only managed to produce 200 titles in 30 years because of no translation funding. So look what can be done with a translation funding program. But in December of 2019, the ministry squashed the funding program. And so there's no funding program anymore. So
John, this is Sarah. Could I ask the books that were translated? You said 2,000?
Close to 2,000.
Were they Indonesian books translated into English, or all those English books that are now in Indonesian?
Indonesian into other languages.
Wow, 2,000.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I mean, not all of them were literary, of course. There were a lot of children's books and things like that. But it was quite amazing, quite impressive. Yeah. But I mean, everyone looks a lot younger than me here. Somebody who's online, what has made you want to be a translator? Maybe Chitra?
Okay, this is Chitra. Based on my experience, I'm not translate any books yet, but right now I'm working as a teacher, and I think that translation is one of the best way to teach my students to learn a proper English. So I want them to know more about the English written, how to write in English, and how to read a classic books and etc. So I do apply to this Zoom room. So I think I will get many informations from here.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if everybody can hear me, but I was wondering if you've translated a book, and then how do you get it published? I mean, have you gone to the publisher first, or has the publisher come to you? Is that anybody experience?
Nope.
Yeah, but yeah. So I think what you call it. We have a very young group. Frankly, I expected it to be older people. But if you would like to ask me any questions, you can ask me too. So, because I've been working in this field for 40 years. So,
Right.
so I do have some experience. So, anybody want to ask me a question by chance?
Mom, can I ask something?
Sure.
This is Sarah. I have, I've just done translations that people have approached me to do, including authors. Never a publisher though. So I'm just, that's a whole nother like realm of translation. I don't know who initiates or who starts the whole process of, oh, this book needs to be translated, you know? Do you have insight on that? I know the Lontar, you've done. Yeah,
well, it can be both ways. When I started out as a translator, it was very similar. Authors would come to me and say, help, help, help. You know, I'd like to, you know, I need to go to a literary festival, or I need, need some work in translation. Generally, if it's going to be published, it's the publisher who initiates the thing. The thing is, in Indonesia, the publishers, especially the large ones like Mizan and the Gramedia Group, they're very active in getting international rights, rights to international bestsellers, that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, if you're translating from Indonesian into another language, it's an uphill climb, as I said, because of that lack of translation funding.
Yeah.
And as one of the speakers pointed out, there's this perception on the part of many foreign publishers that, oh, it's not going to sell, and they're not going to take a chance on it, which is kind of understandable. Of course, they don't want to lose money, but and translation usually takes up at least a quarter of the production budget, much higher than other places. What else? What else would you like to know?
May I ask you
Sure.
a question? Okay. In the last year, I thought I have read a blog of a translator, and they give suggestions about how to publish translations book from English to Indonesian and Indonesian to English, and they said that before they translate a book, they themselves choose the book that they are going to translate to Indonesia. So how do you choose your the book that you want to translate to Bahasa Indonesia or other language based on your experience?
Well, in general, I mean, most publishers are commercial, so they want to make money. They are going to only publish books that they think will sell well. Those who are slightly more idealistic will use, for example, a bestseller to pay for the cost of less popular books. So, like when I was in New York, I translated several Pramudia books under a pen name, but I went to the publisher's office, and here's these books by Michael Jackson and pop stars, and I said, Will, you publish that kind of crap too? And he said, well, John, that crap pays for all the good stuff that we do.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah. So, but again, a commercial publisher is going to, you know, look and see that if he or she thinks it will sell, basically. That's true all over the world. This is why, as the speakers were talking about, there's all these translation funding programs and these associations that support the translation of their nation's literature into other languages. As I said earlier, with all that, the big number of books that went into other languages with that translation funding program, okay, people are going to take a chance because they're not going to lose, you know. And if I can, you know, I fought for years to have that translation funding program started, and I was very bitterly disappointed when they closed it down. But that's one of the reasons I'm holding these webinars, is to get opinions from other translators, because they all know me, but I want I want other people to say something. Anybody have a comment here?
John, as you know, the rate for translation from English to Indonesia is offered in main publisher is very low. You cannot make a living on that. So that's why I'm translating just like my side job, or I still have my main job as a teacher, and I also translate documents, which pays very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So being a literary translator is literally not easy.
Yeah.
You cannot live. You cannot live by
No, the funny thing is that there was a new law that went into effect last year in Indonesia that documents, people can be the rate now for the standard rate for the government is 250,000 rupiah per page.
Yeah, per page, yes.
But there was an exception. No, this does not include literary translation. That's all negotiable. And most of the publishers pay only like 10 to 15,000 a page.
Yes.
Yeah. So, which is, I'm sorry, why you see so many poor translations.
Yeah.
Because nobody can live as a translator.
Yes.
So they, a lot of them just use Google Translate and then fix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we translators have to learn to fight a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, I don't see any possibility because, as you know, the sales of translated books in Indonesia is also very low.
Oh, that's not true. That's not true. I mean, a lot of the bestsellers from Gourmedia and Mizan are translations.
Yes.
Into, you know, I mean, look at the Harry Potter books. Look at, you know, all the Disney books. Look at the Japanese stuff. There, I mean, they sell extremely well here. Yeah. I mean,
so you mean
in Indonesia,
the bestseller can subsidize the less well sells books?
Yeah, but if you're a true commercial publisher, you don't think about that. But of the, there's about sometimes between 40 to 50,000 books published in Indonesia a year, or new titles. But almost half are translations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Almost half a translation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I have too many questions? I'm sorry.
No.
Two more questions. One was, I would love to know how you got that initiative to get some government funding to translate the Indonesian text in it, or to broaden that. Because that's, I mean, I do lots of things, and translation's sort of one of them, but my passion is just to some of the creative work that's here, the body of work and the experience here. I just want the broader audience, the world audience, to see that.
Yeah.
You know,
that is where the Frankfurt Book Fair played a very important role. Because part of the contract with the Frankfurt Book Fair is that the country has to have a translation funding program.
Ah, okay.
And that when Indonesia was market-focused country at the London Book Fair,
Right.
there was the same clause that Indonesia had to have a translation funding program.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's no longer the case.
Right.
And so they've cut all the funds. Now we have to. What time is it now? It's we have only about 10 more minutes. Farid, are the others back in the general session or not yet?
Not yet, John. Jadi berapa menit lagi?
How much time? Okay, yeah. So I think I wanted one of you to speak to the general audience. Would one of you like to speak? Or no? If not, I will speak for you. But I'm sure you have more questions for the other speakers as well. But and also remember that next week there's another session, same time. But you know, thank you for. Oh, by the way, I should put my email in the chat room. I guess. Oh, actually, it was no. I'll put my email down in case you want to ask any, questions later.
Okay.
Okay.
I had one more question, so I'll email it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
I mean, do we need to go back to the big group?
I'm saying 1 minute. 1 minute.
My question was just like the explosion of English books, translated into Indonesian books. Like, where did that come from? Was that just a private Gramedia publisher decided to do that? I mean, it's crazy in the last 10 years how many books now there are in Bahasa.
Well, it's a kind of a long thing, but it's also about Indonesia becoming much more international and be involved in international book fairs where they buy rights, and that kind of thing. Okay. Yeah, but anyway, we should get back to the plenary or whatever.
Thank
I don't know
you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. So
Okay. We will bring another participant to main room. Back. Yeah.
Is, all of the participants, right?
Yeah, all of participants.
To the main room.
So Farid, nanti tampilkan semua pembicara.
Yeah.
At the bottom. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What, Yanni?
So actually, the breakout room session is supposed to be over. So yeah, so we'll see. Thank you everyone for your for the sharing, and we'll see you in the.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yani just make a closing statement.
Oh, okay. I see.
In another room.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, is everybody back?
Not yet.
Spotlight.
Okay. Now let's spotlight the other speakers, the other monitor. Nikki, Bjorn, Alexandra. Hello, Alexandra. Hello, Nikki. Where's Bjorn? So is the Bjorn's group, are they still talking?
Wait, Bjorn and some of participants still in another room. Yeah.
Can you close the rooms, please?
Yeah. We have already closed the room. Just this is the process.
Okay.
So.
Okay, can we see Bjorn?
I'm
There
here.
he is. There he is. Okay. And can all this, I assume everyone can hear me now. We only have, about 10 minutes left. But originally I had wanted a representative from the one of the translators to speak. But I would like to first to hear, I mean, if like Alexandra, from your group, what did you get out of that? Did you, what questions did you ask?
Okay, very, very quickly. It was fascinating, and I wish we had more time to talk and answer all the questions, and also for everyone to introduce themselves, because we didn't have enough time for that. But the main questions that came up were about contracts, and what is the kind of hierarchy of what you can ask for in a situation where you may not even have a contract given to translators. Issues like, the translator's name is not even acknowledged in the publication, etc., etc. So it's really about collectively fighting for these conditions to be introduced and to become normal in that context. And if translators get together and none of them accepts to work for publishers who do not, do not do the right thing, then things will change. And so I would say, you really have to work together. And so solidarity is the thing. The other one was, there was someone actually from Beijing who is just starting out. And so I said, Nikki, she should contact you. And she is a writer who is majoring in creative writing. And I think this is a very interesting topic, writers who are also translators. So she will probably contact you and send some work to Paper Republic. And we had questions like, flat fee or royalties, but when you don't have a contract at all, it becomes, irrelevant. And I explained that royalties is something that you generally don't get around Europe. You get a flat fee in Britain. Translators these days usually get royalties, but it's something they had to ask for. And one important issue, which was raised by the Italian participant, who is also an academic, is how to ensure that translation can be included in research output. And again, I explained that this is something that you have to fight for. And we have a number of translators who are also academics here in the UK, and it's something that is being discussed quite a lot. Also for writers, if you are a writer, and it depends on what you teach. It depends on the circumstances. So it's quite a complex issue, but it's something that is discussed. Yes.
Thank you, Alexandra. How about you, Bjorn? What did you get out of the conversation?
Well, it was rather spread, because we represented very different parts of the world. We were one from Britain translating Chinese, one from Germany translating Indonesian, and one from India translating English and German into one of the Indian languages. So it was difficult to find quite common ground, and also one of the Indonesian participants had a technical problem, so he was commenting on the chat besides the conversation the rest of us had. So it was a bit complicated. Anyway, we tried to look on at questions you had given us, and the first one was, are you credited in the translated work? And for most of us, it's that we do get credited for a few from India. It was not to be taken for granted, but it has been, it's improvised. The situation has become better for the last 10 years. Then the question, is there a translation funding program or supporting translation initiatives from your source language? Yes, most of us do have that, translating from European languages. The Indonesian program was cancelled a few years ago, so there doesn't exist anything anymore. Two most pressing issues, those differed a bit because they're so spread. But from Germany, the problem of convincing a publisher to take on an Indonesian serious work of a literary work, that's a problem.
That came up in our group as well. I just want to say, sorry to butt in, but it was one of the issues raised as well. How do you? It's about promotion. It's about John. It's up to you and others, you know, to do the promotion. But that came up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, go on.
Also, the problem of the general fee recommended by the British Translators Association, because for other languages, it may be okay, but translating Chinese, the word count gets lower in English than it is in Chinese. so you get a reduced fee there.
It shouldn't be like that.
No, it shouldn't, of course not.
That's actually a misunderstanding of what that observed rate is. But if the person wants to contact me directly, I can explain that.
Yeah.
Okay, Nikki, how about you? What did you get out of the conversation?
We talked about money, or the lack of, for most of the time. And I suppose you could say that answered the question, or rather it didn't. It posed the question, how do we support ourselves? We were quite a varied group, Chinese to English, Dutch to Indonesian, Malay to Indonesian, a writer, English to Indonesian, Indonesian to English. I suppose the thing that really came out was that in two different countries, you may have two very different rates. So suppose you're living in Holland and you're translating into Indonesian, you may be offered by the Indonesian publisher a rate which it isn't possible to live on. And I pointed out that also the same is true for English to Chinese. And in a broader sense, it's because the status of translation in that country may be very low. I think it's actually easier to be a Chinese to English translator than to be an English to Chinese one. Just because you don't have the status, you don't have the supporting organizations, you don't have the community. And the other pressing issue, that's to go straight through to your last question, was that as translators, we know what fantastic literature and literary nonfiction that there is out there. And how do we persuade the publishers to fork out the money and actually produce the translations? Because so much good stuff doesn't get translated. Okay, that's it.
Yep, that is true. That came up in our section too, about, you know, how do we get these books published? You know, and I've been in the industry for a few years, and so I shared my experience. But basically, it goes back to, I think, that common point that there needs to be greater solidarity, knowledge sharing among associations, and a lot, kind of a international lobby group for translators or something. But anyway, okay, we're actually going past time right now. So I would like to say thank you to the speakers, the audience, all of our supporting institutions. But before I go, I'd like Claudia, if she's willing, to say a few more words. Hello, Claudia.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah. So I also want to thank you very much, all of you, for the participants for being here with us, and all of our speakers today, and John for moderating and planning the session. Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yep, I
you
can
should
hear
be
you.
able to hear me. Okay, yeah. So there were really interesting questions that came up, and I am aware that we were not able to answer all of them. So that's a pity, and perhaps some used, the speakers used to see the questions in the chat, so perhaps you can answer them, or if the ones who have not been answered could provide their email address to me, then we could answer the questions via email. At the same time, we would really be looking forward to your feedback and to hear what you liked, what you didn't like. John, do we have a evaluation form?
We don't. I should have thought about that. I didn't.
But we will prepare one and then send it to all the participants. So then we would really be looking forward to hearing what you liked and what you didn't like, and what kind of questions you would like to have attended to next time, because we, as John said, something that we probably need to do is an international lobby group for translators, or at least do whatever we can to support translators, to support you, because as I said earlier, your work is so important. So yeah, thank you very much. We hope to see you next week. John, what's the title next week?
Title next week is The Time for Translations is Now, basically.
And what is it about?
It's more about content, more about what's out there and what we need to do to get it in there.
To get it published in the different countries.
Yeah, I hope everyone will join again. It was great talking to Nikki and Alexandra and Bjorn. Thank you so much for coming and joining. It was wonderful. Would you like to say a goodbye to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, yes. Goodbye. It was. I wish we had more time.
Really enjoyable.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.
I will put my email address in the chat. So if you have anything that you would like to say for now and you would like to get rid of, send to us as immediately, please.
Yeah, I'll do the same thing.
Yes.
Oops, sorry. This should have been to everyone.
Yeah. I'd like to say thank you to the organizers, John and Claudia, and it's been brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, all of you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Just a minute. I'm just sharing my email address. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so